What is up, guys? Welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about my biggest regret in my baseball career. So we're just going to jump right into it. My biggest regret is not paying somebody earlier for their expertise and for them to train me. Now, I know right now the people who need to hear this message are going to try and X out of this video and back out, and the people who agree with it are going to continue to watch it. If you're one of those people who's about to back out of the video, just listen, hear me out. It'll all make sense. I think I may sway your opinion a little bit here. So I've had so many issues in my life or in my baseball career that were strictly because I just wanted to do it on my own. And I didn't want to give anybody else the time of day. I didn't want to pay anybody. For whatever reason, I didn't want to pay anyone. And I see that so often today. Kids will reach out to me, kids being anywhere from high school, college, early pro, and they'll ask for some help, and I'll try and give my help. And if the help involves too much of my time, I'll tell them to sign up. Hey, pick your favorite person, a person you really like, who you follow on social media. Who do you want to train you? Who's that person? Go pick them. Go pay them whatever they want to be paid. Have them train you. Ask them questions. Learn from them. And then when you learn everything you can, go to the next guy, right? And so many people just will give replies back of like, oh, well, I don't really want to pay somebody, or, oh, thanks, and I know they're not going to do it. But guys, I'm telling you, that is a huge, huge, huge mistake. They have value, and there's an exchange of value. That value costs money, which is also value. If you want to get something, you have to give something. That's just how the world works. Get used to it now, because that's just how the world works. But I wrote down some notes here of things in my life, situations that I could have avoided if I would have just reached out and had somebody. Well, I did have somebody. I knew there were multiple people in the area that I followed on social media, that I knew what they were talking about in terms of training, and the only blocker was I just didn't want to pay them money. Guys, think about this. How stupid is this? I could have saved years, and we'll talk about exactly the things that I could have saved years on, but I could have saved years in my baseball career of suffering, of surgery recoveries, of getting the surgery at all. Very easily could have been a top rounder out of high school if I would have just asked somebody else, paid somebody else who had done what I wanted to do and could turn me into what I wanted to become. So, guys, it's just so dumb to not do that. I can't stress it enough. Other people have been through what you want to do and where you want to go, and they turn people into what you want to be. Pay them to become what you want to be, learn everything you can. There's so much to learn. You can save so much time. But let's go ahead and get into the issues. So, first issue was I didn't know anything about joint structure and how you can't always out mobility work a mobility issue. So, for example, I have really bad internal rotation in both hips. Now, what I didn't know was that the reason I have bad internal rotation of both hips is because I have a bony block in my hips. So that's never going to get better. There is a bone, I go into internal rotation, and it's bone-on-bone contact. So obviously I can't get more range of motion because there's no more range of motion to get. Now, I thought that you could just, I'll just do mobility work. That's what I've seen on the internet. I've seen all these people do hip internal rotation drills. I've seen them roll out with a lacrosse ball. So that's what I did every day. Stretch myself in hip internal rotation, roll out with a lacrosse ball. And guys, my hips just hurt more and more and more. Obviously they hurt because I'm shoving a bone into another bone just every day, pounding it in, right? And then I saw all these mechanical things that other people would do, and they move differently than me with their hips. And obviously they did because we have different hip structures, but I didn't know that. So I tried to pattern my mechanics based off them. I threw harder and harder and harder. And then guess what? One day, I tore my hip labrum on my back hip because I was the mechanics that I wanted to do, my ideal mechanics in my head that I had come up with were wrong. They didn't fit my joint structure. So I tore my back hip labrum. And guys, that's not an easy surgery. Hip labrum and shoulder labrum surgeries, you don't just always come back from those. So surgery is a huge deal. It took me 2 years to get back to even close to where I was. So before I had that hip labrum surgery in college, I was touching 97. 2 years after it, I was touching 94. I mean, when I first started going back to throw after the hip labrum surgery, I was touching 87. Guys, I lost 10 miles an hour after about a year surgery recovery. So you think about that. I spent 2 years clawing my way back to get within 3 miles an hour of where I was. I I didn't need to do that. I could have just paid somebody who knew what they were talking about and avoided that completely. So not only would I have saved 2 years, I probably would have thrown harder than 97 instead of 2 years later throwing 94. Right? So next point here, how to build training programs. I had no idea. All I did, which was actually really good, was try hard, recover, try hard, recover. That was kind of the model. That's what I understood, which is great, right? But ultimately, that isn't what's most optimal. What's most optimal is you have all these different training stimuli within a program, and each thing is in there for a reason. So you're trying to get different adaptations to become a better thrower, specific to what you're good at and what you're bad at, and what's going to give you the most bang for your buck. Now, I didn't know that at the time, right? So I just thought, well, let's just go and lift heavy, which was great. So I got a great deadlift, got a great row, like single arm dumbbell rows, things like that. Long tossed a lot. So you look at all those. I built those adaptations well because I had a pretty good idea and learned pretty well of how to build those adaptations. But I did nothing with my bench press, so spent years trying to figure that out. Did nothing with my squat, did nothing with my ankles, any sort of ankle mobility. There's so much that I could have done more efficiently, areas that I could have done better. I could have gotten so much better, again, if I would have just paid somebody who knew what they were talking about. I put in so much effort, guys. Think about every single training session you do. If you could get more out of that training session, compound that over a month, 2 months, over a year. Think about this. If you have a coach from the time you're 15 to you're 20, instead of just doing it yourself, that's 5 years of compounding, of getting better and better and better and better compared to what you could have done on your own. Next one was how to handle return to throwing programs. So I don't talk about this a whole lot, but my initial elbow injury that I'm still dealing with today was from a botched on-ramp that I wrote myself. So I took a few weeks off from throwing. I thought that 4 weeks was plenty long of an on-ramp, and then I got right back into pulling down. Ended up pulling down 102 that day, which was about 8 or 9 miles an hour harder than anything that I had thrown. Basically, I had a massive acute workload spike. And I ended up tearing my UCL, needed to get surgery, which then led to multiple other surgeries. And here I am 4 years later, still trying to get healthy from that one initial injury. Guys, if I would have just had somebody in my corner that knew exactly what they were talking about, I could have avoided all that. Now, that one's a little bit of a caveat because at the time, Modus didn't exist. Throwing programs were not as advanced as they are now. It'd be pretty hard to find somebody at that time who could have fixed that. So I don't feel as bad about that one as I do about my hip, because the hip totally could have been avoided, but the elbow maybe not could have been avoided because I don't know if the knowledge was all there at the time, but it is now, and that's the point. It exists now. We know what we're talking about now, and you can avoid these things, you know. Next one, how important sleep is. So my sleep quality was terrible my whole life. I didn't know that it was terrible. I didn't know that it was crashing my hormones and making my quality of life, as well as my training adaptations, as well as my performance. I didn't realize it was making all of those things way worse. I didn't even know how to measure it. I didn't even know what it is. I didn't know what to do about it. Had to learn all those things myself, which took years. You know, again, you can cut years off the process by paying somebody who knows what they're talking about. So last bullet point we'll talk about here was just how important diet was, or is. So how to structure a diet to fit for my goals as an athlete. So I went through this large bulk in college where I thought that, you know, mass is gas. Most people go through that one. I went from about 225 to 245 over a period of about a year and a half. So I knew how to increase calories. I knew how to watch a scale, things like that. But I didn't know much about macronutrient balance. I didn't know much about micronutrients and making sure I was getting enough things, micronutrients, to continue to run different systems in my body. I didn't know much at all. I was just kind of blindly running through more calories, which obviously I got really fat, which didn't help me at all. So it took me a year or so, year and a half maybe, to build up to 245. And then I had to take more time after that, once I actually learned what I was talking about, and actually learned what I was doing. I had to take more time to then cut that away because it was all useless. So I spent all this time and all this effort doing something that didn't really matter and didn't really help me, and just because I was unwilling to pay somebody who knew what they were talking about. And guys, think about this. You have two options, right? Option one is you try and do it yourself. You're going to run into problems, right? You're going to hit your head into a wall. Basically, I look at it as you are walking around in a house that you don't know the floor plan of the house, and you have a blindfold on. Now, eventually, you'll figure out what the house looks like, right? You'll bump into the walls enough, and you'll figure out what the house looks like. But in sports and in training, that bumping into the walls could mean a torn hip labrum. It could mean a torn UCL. Now, it could just mean, oh, I strained this or that and I'm out for a week, right? That's what it could mean. But it could mean much more serious than that. You're taking, that bumping into a wall is a mistake. And anytime that there's a large mistake, you have a pretty large chance for a pretty big injury and a lot of problems. Now, how much better would it be if you could just ask the guy who built the house for the floor plan? You know, how much quicker do you figure out what that house looks like and how to navigate the house? And that's really the point here. There's an exchange of value. You get so much time saved, so much more efficient training. You get to learn so much and progress yourself based off the successes and failures of the person that you're learning from. Now, you can hop from person to person. I actually highly recommend that. Spend some time with one guy. Once you feel like you've learned what you have to learn, go to the next guy. Probably takes 6 to 12 months per guy, you know. Keep learning, keep building, keep growing, things like that. But guys, how easy is it to just get a job? Let's say you work, because this is one thing that I learned when I got older. You can get a job and you can make money. You don't have to rely on your parents to just pay for everything. So let's say you get a job at like Chipotle, right? Little known fact, perk of working at Chipotle is get free food. So now, not only do you have money to spend on these trainers, but you also get free food. So you get to eat quality food consistently. You could start to do these things. You can position yourself in a way where you can produce the value to then trade with your trainer, whoever you want to train you. And you don't have to rely on your parents or on other people to give you the money, or just say, oh, well, I don't have the money and that's it. Guys, look around, find a job that you can do where you can learn at that job, you can get some other perk from that job, and the other perk is you just get money that you can trade value for someone else. Guys, if you follow all my stuff, you'll hear me say this over and over and over and over again. Find mentors, find coaches, people you want to learn from, either on social media or you see somebody who's training someone locally. Find them, pay them, exchange value, pay money for their value that you get in return. Learn so much from them, ask questions, and just learn, build for yourself. Over time, you're going to avoid so many problems. You're going to get so much better. It's such a better option than just trying to do it yourself and not wanting to pay anybody. Guys, I cannot stress enough, you are hindering your development as an athlete and how far you will go in your career by just trying to do it yourself and not trying to pay anybody any money. So that's my spiel, guys. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you got something out of it. Comment below if you have any questions. And get a coach, someone who knows what they're doing, and progress faster than you would on your own.